Hey, how's it going? This is Pablo with Meditation Amsterdam. And in today's video, we're gonna get right into the very heart of things by discussing the topic of the inner self. So this is something that has taken me quite a while to understand, and it only really started to land since I would say a couple of months ago. And ever since it did, I can say that my entire view on self-realization, my entire view on the practicing of yoga, meditation, Tai Chi, has taken on a completely different level. The energetics in my body are, it's like there's fireworks going on. My meditation has become enormously more effective and centered. Everything has taken on a very high quality, and I feel much more at ease, much more in control. It is almost as if a lot of the preparation work that I had been doing in terms of meditation, in terms of practicing Tai Chi, and all the study that I was doing from the Gitas and other texts is as if I was laying the roots for what was to come. And right now that first little plant has just popped up and it has started to flower. I can really feel the change taking place right now. And I wanted to share with you guys what is at the heart of this realization. And there's been many books written on the subject. In fact, most ancient scriptures that have to do with religion or mysticism are all trying to point you to the same thing. But it's very difficult to understand unless the realization has dawned on you. Now, I've made past videos about why it is so difficult to become self-realized. It's almost like you're trying to pull yourself up by your own bootstraps. And in those videos, I essentially try to invite people to establish a regular practice of things that seem to be going nowhere, but which are have been designed to prepare your mind-body system to realize certain things. These are things that you cannot think yourself into. You cannot just study really hard and memorize it and logically understand it. You're trying to come up, or you're trying to arrive to realizations of being, not of thinking or not of conceptual things. They are really very profound. And the only way to arrive to these is if you have done the preparation work for your mind to be primed to receive these realizations. And then once they take place, you realize that these are things that cannot be learned. They can really only be, as a matter of fact. You can only be those things. You cannot know those things. They are things to be lived or been, as opposed to known. It's a very tricky thing to convey with words. But what I wanted to express in this video is what happens as you start to go within, or as my Tai Chi teacher would say, when you start to go inward. In fact, his entire practice is called Inward, which is a very clever name. Because what tends to happen to us is that we are living in the periphery. And the entire move of yoga and meditation is a move towards the center of the self. Now, we may be using exercises and even props during meditation. So the whole thing about observing the breath for extended periods of time while you're doing meditation is really just a crutch. It's a prop so that you can give your mind something to stabilize itself with that is not too subtle. It needs to be gross enough so that it's tangible and I can just constantly feel it, such as the breath. But really, that's not what meditation proper is. What meditation proper is the withdrawal of the senses, and you stop sensing the breath. You stop looking at a flame, or you stop keeping a certain thought in mind, and you just retract into what the Ashtavakra Gita would call the heart of awareness. And this is what I want to convey to you guys, is that the entire process is one of inward withdrawal, and to the point where you start to get to the very heart of the self, as opposed to the periphery. And it's funny because normally when we think about the periphery, when we think about the ego, let's say, we talk about, oh, he or she has a big ego because they act in a very arrogant way, or they think that their big car or their big job is their they feel big because of those things outside of themselves, right? So it is easy to spot someone who's living in the periphery when their periphery is about external objects or external relationships or external situations. But it is less easy to identify the periphery when it is internal to you. In other words, there are many things that are internal to you or that you consider yourself, which are still in the periphery. And so if you take the Advaita teachers, so the non-dualist teachings, they will tell you that everything that you can point out, everything that can be experienced, in other words, that stands out, anything that can be named or discussed, is in the periphery, because there's somebody there to point out and discuss it, and you are the one who is pointing it out and discussing it. You are the one who needs to first perceive it so that you can then label it and discuss it and give it a name. So the perceiver itself is what we're trying to look for. We're trying to withdraw and have awareness start to notice itself. So it's almost, it is as difficult as turning a lamp and having a lamp illuminate itself. It can't be done because the lamp is the source of the light. Yeah, it's like trying to have an eye look at itself when the eye is the one doing the seeing. Yeah, so it is. So you come to realize this, but in doing that, you start to move into the center of your very being, which is not personal, because the personality, even your humanity, if you will, is still in the periphery. It's something you can observe. Your gender, right? You identifying as a white man or a black woman are all things in the periphery, because they can be observed by the self that does the observing. And that's the self that you want to find. You want to find that very center. Now, I have found certain things that help moving towards that center. And it's almost, it really is a movement from the outside to the inside, right? And so one of the things that I've found that really makes a difference is starting with my sense of sight or my sense of bodily sensations. If we take the sense of sight, it is very important because visual perception takes on a massive amount of computing power in our brain. It's very dominant. So our sense of sight is very dominant in our psyche. And so if we learn to see that one correctly, then that movement towards the inside starts to take place. So let me try to explain by analogy what is the difference between let's say your normal sense of sight and a sense of sight that comes from within. So when you are exercising your sense of sight normally, as I'm looking, for example, at this video, I am observing the video, and my entire attention is caught up out here in the periphery, right? So I'm looking at something and I am there. I am mentally there, so to speak. Now, the move we want to make is to be looking at that something that is out there, but we want to be looking from in here, so from behind your eyes, so to speak. Yeah. So from behind my eyes, I can still be looking at that thing out there, but now I'm mentally within as opposed to mentally out in the periphery. And so that there is already a movement from being out here to being in here looking out. So I'm looking out at the world from within. I am inside looking outwards, so to speak. And that already makes a big difference. That's a move within. We can't even call that being in the heart, the very heart of your awareness, but you've already found that you are in here looking out. And that is a movement that's an inward movement. The other thing that I think helps when it comes to vision is normally our eyes and our sight is very piercing. It's trying to identify individual elements and to go very into as much detail as it can. So, especially when we're working on our computer, we're watching like every word, for example, and we watch the mouse and the little arrow move around the screen. And then we're done with that, and I turn to my right and I see that cup of coffee and I grab it, right, with my hand and so on. So we are picking out very detailed individual things, and therefore we are using what you could call the focused vision. So you are in this very small circle in the middle of your field of vision. But here's an experiment that has helped me a lot and which changes your perception very dramatically, which is to try to open your field of vision so that instead of seeking out individual objects, what you are trying to do instead is you are observing the entire field of vision. You can even put your hands on the corner of your eyes in the periphery and sort of wiggle your fingers and do that, for a while, and just try to keep perceiving very intently that periphery out there. That prevents you from spotting individual things in your focus vision, and it opens your field of vision fully, so that now you are seeing the entire thing, so to speak, right? So you are seeing your entire field of vision. And what is interesting is that you can then sort of objectify the field of vision itself. So as opposed to objectifying or identifying the individual objects that can be seen in your field of vision, you are looking at the field itself. So now I'm looking at the full field of vision, and that is a thing in itself, right? And that's a very interesting observation, because then it's almost like you are observing observation itself as opposed to observing objects in observation, right? So I can see my whole field of vision, and that does a couple of things. So it separates me from it prevents me from looking at individual objects. It almost necessarily brings me inward as the observer of that field of vision, which is what I'm trying to find, really. And the other thing it does is it's very difficult for the mind to be perceiving so much and thinking at the same time. So a great way to bring your thinking mind to a halt is to open your field of vision, and as opposed to narrowing in and honing in on specifics, you broaden that field of vision, you're looking at the entire thing, and then suddenly you find that inner self looking at that whole field of vision. So, that whole periphery thing that we were talking about earlier, you can do the same. You are inside, and there's an inner you looking at that entire field of vision. So you identify that you are looking from the inside out to that field of vision. And that's it's a great mental exercise. You feel broad, you feel spacious, your thinking stops, and the world starts to look very clear and very sharp and very alive, and you're coming into the moment when you do that, just by playing with your mind in the correct way. Okay, so that is when it comes to vision. And the other one is you could do it also with bodily sensations, which are very gross and very easy to identify and to feel. So you could feel your feet, you could feel your legs, you can even do it with your eyes closed. Maybe you could even do it with your hands. Starting with the hands is always easy because the lips, the tongue, and the hands, well, in general, the face and the hands, but specifically the lips and the tongue and the hands and the fingers are areas of your body which have a very large amount of nerve endings. So if you were to create a map of your body based on how much sensitivity there is, people have done that, it's called the homunculus. What you find is that you would have like massive lips and massive hands because that's where a lot of the sensitivity is concentrated. Therefore, when you activate the mouth, forehead, and the hands, you're activating very large areas of your brain. And so one of the things that you could start by doing is you could start by closing your eyes and asking yourself the question, right now, how do I know I have hands? Like there's something telling me that I have hands, right? And what you'll realize is that something is some sort of aliveness feeling inside the hands. Maybe a little bit of pins and needles, maybe some waves. If you become sensitive enough, you would feel your heartbeat in your hands. And then maybe you also feel the temperature of the room in your hands, right? So you feel all those things. Maybe you feel how the muscles are pressing against the bones or how the skin is, contracting or breathing. You can feel a large number of things once you start going into this. The point being, you are going into sensory mode as opposed to thinking mode, right? And as you do that, what you start to realize is that you are not your body, but you are the conscious awareness that can observe the body. Normally, we are identified with the body, but that identification is a form of confusion. We are moving around, our body is our vehicle, and we then therefore tend to say, I am fat, right? Or I am tired, right? When what we're really saying is, I have a body that is fat, or the body is currently tired. So language plays a very big role in all of this, of course. But when you start to observe the body in a lot of detail, the very next thing that will start to happen is that you can find your inner self observing the body. And you can start with your hands. Your hands can never observe you. Let's put it that way, right? You are always the one observing you. It kind of sounds obvious, but you tend to think as your hands as part of yourself. This is not correct. This in non-dualist philosophy, this is a form of confusion. Your hands are not part of yourself. The only part of yourself is whatever it is in there that can observe your hands, that can feel that they're there, that can notice that there are hands, right? And so the more closely you observe your body, the more you start to realize that the body is something that you observe, whatever that you is, that inner self. The heart of awareness can observe the body. You are the heart of awareness, but you're not the body. There is a difference between those two. You have a body, but you are not the body. And so you can try those experiments with the body. You can try those experiments with the field of vision. You can also try it with sound. In essence, you can try it with any sensation. I find that body awareness and visual perception are the easiest ones to play with, and very effective. You could try with other senses. It's a little bit iffier. It hasn't really worked for me, I have to say. And you can also try it once you're done with that with thought and emotion, and that's when it becomes well-rounded. So I created a video called, I created 4 videos on the foundations of mindfulness as written down by the Buddha, you start with mindfulness of the body, mindfulness of states of mind, mindfulness of thoughts, mindfulness of emotions. So you are mindful of all areas of perception: bodily perception, sensory perception, and mental perception, emotional perception. Yeah. And as you do all that, so you're being mindful of this, mindful of this, mindful of this, mindful of this. So you are observing this, observing this, observing this, observing this. At some point, the realization dawns of like, hang on a second, I'm observing all these things, but I am none of them. I am the one observing all those things. So what am I really? And that's when you start to come into that center, into the heart of awareness, which is the one observing all these things. Yeah. And so I wanted to share that because it can be a direct practice, right? If explained to you correctly and if it lands, you can just dive straight into that practice and bypass perhaps decades of yogic observances and practices and things of that kind, because all of those are meant to prime you so that you can find that inner self. And now, mind you, once you find that, which could be called awakening, you still need to, or you don't need to do anything, but you would still want to do the work of, from that inner self, from that center, observing everything out there, which is really not out there, but we'll get to that later, observing everything so that you can start to create links between that inner self and all the periphery. And then that creates a very tight and wholeness web, right? So you become whole, because at the moment that inner self might be absent from your life. You live in the periphery, but even that periphery is just full of confusion and full of gaps and things. Whereas once you find that center, from that center you start to observe every element in the periphery and you become whole. You have a center and you are kind of like a ball that is supported from every angle from the center. And that starts to create a very complete being out of yourself, makes you very happy, makes you very energized, and it makes it so that every aspect in that periphery is wholesome. Because right now, those aspects in the periphery are, because there is no center, the periphery is fragile, and it knows it's fragile, and therefore it tries to prop itself up through rigidity, or through or just enters into chaos. And so there's several aspects of your life or your personality that are out of balance because they don't have anything real to rely on, and they know it. It's all transitory, so it just feels very flimsy. So what you do is you try to put up a front, or you become meek and weak, right? So yin and yang, right? Like different people, or in different areas of your life, you might be too yang, too arrogant, too out there. In some areas of your life, you might be too yin, or just too shy and too mild and too meek, and those are overreactions to this underlying knowledge that periphery has nothing real to support it, so it's weak. And in some cases you might be aggressive or just plain nasty or avoidant altogether, right? Whereas when you find the center it supports the periphery, because that center is real. That center, your beingness, is something that can't be taken away from you, right? So when from that beingness you act on something in the periphery, that periphery now has substance. And that substance, it can be felt, right? It can be felt in the quality with which it comes across. And it's just like once you start to experience this, everything begins to change in such a big way. I can hardly tell you what changes are coming your way the moment this starts to happen. And therefore, this video on finding that center, finding the heart of awareness, from which you go then outwards, right? So you first need to go inward, find that central place that is your very essence, your very being, your sense of presence, if you will. It's totally timeless, and it's totally real, and you can feel it, you can sense it. It's a sense. It's not an experience. Experience is to stand out. This doesn't stand out, therefore it doesn't exist, so to speak. It is. right? So that's the difference. Everything that exists is not you. You just are. And so from that beingness, you project yourself to the outside world, and then you start to create a very, very beautiful round existence that is supported by something with actual essence and reality. So that is a video on finding your center. I will probably keep going on about this topic, because this is what the scriptures and all these like hermetic societies or whatever would call the secret of secrets. Like this is it. This is the thing, and is the thing to be found, and once found, cultivated. So I hope that helps. Actually, when you bring it back to the topic of meditation, the non-dualists, the Advaita practitioners, say that the only real meditation is the one that has no duality, right? And that center of yours has no duality. There's no yin and yang there. There's no good or bad. It just is. It's isness itself. And so meditation eventually leads to that, and that can be cultivated as well. So so that was a video on finding the center. I hope it's informative, and I will come back with more. Cheers.